Good evening, everybody. I'm attorney Chris DeBerry. Welcome to my weekly broadcast called Legalese. In Legalese, I try to explain important points about personal injury and what you need to do if things happen, what kind of insurance coverage you should have, and so on. And I try to answer important questions that you might have if you're somebody that finds himself perhaps injured in a motor vehicle accident, or if you have a loved one or friend that is as well. And this is very, very good advice. I've been practicing personal injury law in the Tampa Bay area for nearly 20 years, and I've handled thousands of cases. And these are a lot of the things that I have observed over time and things that you can do if you find yourself in that situation that will not only help you in terms of being safe, it will also help you in terms of making sure that you're in a position to bring a claim and doing things that may be necessary to help you do that. Now, normally at the time of a motor vehicle accident, people don't necessarily have their heads about them. I mean, a traumatic event has occurred, and it is important to try to keep one's head if that's possible. But I'm going to go through a few tips that I give that I think are very important tips for people who find themselves in this situation that may help them through and put them in a better position once the accident happens, and shortly thereafter with the things that occur and the things that you should and need to do. So let's get started. And please, if you like what you hear this evening, please feel free to like it below, comment, or share it. I appreciate your feedback and I appreciate your questions. In fact, I've had whole segments that have been based upon your questions. But let's get down to it. What happens if you've been involved in a motor vehicle accident? What should you do? Well, the first and most important thing is try to stay calm. At times after an accident, adrenaline and emotions are running high, and that's just human nature. We're terrified, we're afraid when things like that happen. We don't always feel like we have our wits about us. We feel jacked up. And it's very, very important at a time like that to try to keep your head. Take a few deep breaths. Try to assess your physical situation. Try to assess danger. If it's a major accident and you're not able to get out of the vehicle, then obviously you need to contact emergency services immediately and have them come to the scene and do whatever is necessary to extricate you or your passengers from the vehicle. But if this is a situation where you're able to move, you're able to assess your situation, look around, and try to figure out how everyone's doing, particularly children. Try to assess their situation, and this will give you a little bit of time to just kind of calm down and try to gather information and assess your situation overall. Very important to do that. The second thing is to not to exit your vehicle. Do not exit your vehicle until you determine that it's safe to do so. Unfortunately, traffic accidents happen in traffic, and people generally won't stop until somebody requires them to. And you've been to the scenes of accidents, probably driven by and see people how close they get to vehicles. And unless there is an emergency vehicle that is directing you to stay away from the scene, people often don't use their common sense and they drive close to the vehicles and doors open and things can happen. So always make sure that it's safe to exit your vehicle and exit from a safe side of the vehicle because other drivers may not stop. The third thing is call 911. I mean, it's important to alert law enforcement and EMS right away if there's even a chance that somebody's injured, and you're not bothering anybody and you're not abusing the system by doing this. This is what the services are for. So if you call 911 and the operator asks if anyone is injured, tell them yes. If you or anybody else involved in the accident is experiencing pain or trauma, or if you're feeling uncertain, tell the operator that you're unsure, but possibly. That way, law enforcement and EMS will be dispatched to the scene, and you'll have additional time to assess your situation and trauma. It will have more time to manifest because as that adrenaline wears off, you stop feeling like you're terrified and feeling like no pain because you're just in that state of high adrenaline. Then you can you're in a better situation. Those symptoms will begin to manifest. Sometimes it takes hours and sometimes days, but it's usually going to happen once you're in a more relaxed state. So take the time, wait for EMS, wait for the police, and get into a safe place and calm down. And don't discuss the accident with the other driver, and don't get into an argument, no matter who's at fault. And whatever the situation, do not apologize. You don't have to do that. The only thing the law requires you to do is exchange your information at the scene of the accident with the other driver. Exchange information. That's what Florida law requires you to do, and you may not refuse to do that. If it's a situation where you anticipate that one of your drivers is injured, or your passengers are injured, or the other driver might be injured, it may be appropriate to stay at the scene of the accident until the police arrive so that they can investigate and take statements and interview witnesses. But in any event, make sure you follow the law, and that at least requires that you exchange your information, that the other driver exchange their information with you, the driver's license, their insurance information, and they can't say no to this. And if they try to leave the scene, if you can get their plate number and call the police, let them know that they've left the scene of an accident without providing their information, they could potentially be charged with a traffic misdemeanor for doing that. One of the things you want to do, and once you've established that things are safe, that you're in a safe place, if perhaps you've had to move the vehicles because they're located in traffic, it's ideal that the vehicles remain in the place where the accident occurred, where the impact occurred, so law enforcement can assess it as it actually happened, or the exact aftermath of the accident. But most of the time, you're going to be requested to move your vehicles to the side of the road, and there's going to be debris and all of that potentially. So move your vehicle to the side of the road, but take pictures of both of the vehicles and try to take them at angles that clearly denote the damage. And also try to make sure you get a picture of the license plate of the other vehicle for the purposes of identification. You also want to take pictures of the scene of the accident, and you want to use reference points that are clear: traffic signals, traffic control devices, street signs, and try to note weather conditions or any potential road distractions or hazards if possible. Also, and this is majorly important, and this is something that people often fail to do, get the names and addresses, phone numbers of witnesses. So if people stop and they render assistance, don't let them leave until they give you their information. Nowadays, you can just take a photograph of their driver's license or their business card, get their phone number, and believe me, time will favor the insurance adjuster. And basically, once an accident happens, your case becomes weaker by the moment as witnesses disappear and information becomes lost. So you really are in a place where you need to preserve it somewhat, because once the witnesses are gone, if they're not identified, then that's that. And there's really nothing you can do, unless somebody knows who they are. But for the most part, the information that's going to be brought to the officer's attention, the things that he's going to evaluate in determining the way the accident happened, potentially handing out a citation, is largely going to be based upon the testimony of independent witnesses, if it's a case of a perhaps he said, she said, and the facts aren't necessarily clear. You may see this in a situation where there's an accident at an intersection where one person is saying they had the green light, the other person is saying, no, they had the green light, but it's a T-bone accident, so you know that one person's not telling the truth. That only one of those people could have had the green light, the other person would have had the red light. However, without a camera and without an eyewitness to testify and tell the police officer, then the officer is going to be in a position where he may not be able to determine liability or write citations, and that's going to be hurtful later on down the road when you're trying to be a claim, because then the at-fault driver is going to have a chance at challenging liability in that situation. Whereas if somebody runs a red light and T-bones you, they should probably be issued a citation and go to court on that. And of course, if you're the victim of an accident, you can go to court and you can be there and be present and express your wishes for the disposition of that to the judge after the hearing is held. And also, you need to be there as a witness for the hearing. And so don't rely on police to obtain witness information. Law enforcement officers don't always seem really thrilled to be there. Sometimes you have the state troopers that may show up an hour after the accident happens. But in that time, get the information, write it down, photograph it, do whatever you have to do to preserve it, because the police, they may not be there in any amount of time, and if they get there, they may be kind of rushing through. Another thing is, you want to be very clear to the officer if you're experiencing physical trauma And in addition to producing the witnesses, the names, and the identity of them, you want to also be clear about how you feel, how any trauma that you experienced immediately after the accident. And the number 7 thing to do is seek medical attention immediately. The most common injuries that are suffered in traffic accidents aren't always immediately apparent, and sometimes they may even take days to manifest. But you have $10,000 of PIP benefits, which are provided under your own policy of auto insurance. And you have 15 days, or actually, you have 14 days to report for medical treatment. But if you're experiencing any symptoms after an accident, don't wait. Go to the ER, get checked out, or get checked out by a physician that you might know. But make sure that you do it as soon as you can. And that way you'll preserve your ability to pursue your PIP benefits. You'll satisfy that legal requirement. In light of changes in Florida law, I call them recent changes, but they're not so recent anymore. They happened around 2012. The PIP benefits were reduced somewhat, but still available if you're able to demonstrate certain things. So these PIP benefits are crucial because what they do is they provide an immediate source of reimbursement for reasonable, related, and medically necessary treatment. And the treatment has to be reasonable in cost. It has to be related to the accident. It has to be medically necessary. And the only requirement that the law places on an accident victim is don't let yourself become worse. Seek appropriate diagnosis, seek appropriate treatment, become well. Don't let yourself get worse because you become a burden on society, and that's something that's considered undesirable by society. So you're required as a citizen to try to mitigate your damages. By that I mean try to make your situation better and try to minimize the damage. And like I said, the best way to do that is seek appropriate diagnosis of your injuries and treatment for your injuries as soon as possible. And if you're experiencing any type of symptoms after an accident, go get checked out. Go to an ER, preferably. Go to a doctor, a physician's office. Go to a walk-in clinic if you have to. But try to do that and try to do that right away. And, obviously make sure that your family members, your children, if they require treatment, make sure that they get it as well. And, if this happens to you and you have questions, please call me. Call my law office at area code 727-656-7852. The law offices of Christopher DeBerry and CDB Injury Law. You can email me at chris@CDB Injury Law. And call me before you report the accident to the insurance company because I can assist you and answer all of the questions and help you. In fact, in clients that I represent, I'll often report the accident for them so that the adjuster speaks to me and deals with me directly. And that's one of the benefits of having an attorney represent you in an injury case is we will be the go-between between you and the very powerful insurance industry that is working really for its own interest. And we are able to insulate our clients from that. But if you've been involved in an accident or somebody who has, please call the law offices of Chris DeBerry, once again at 727-656-7852. I hope you found this segment informative and helpful. Hope you never need it, but in case you do, there are some things that you can do. And just, go through each one of them. They're very important and very helpful. And thank you very much for tuning in this evening. And remember, if you like what you heard, please like it, comment on it, share it, and please don't hesitate to send me questions so that I can expand on this information. This is really meant to be a primer and just give you some basic information that could be useful and that I know is useful in these situations based on my own experience, not only as a personal injury attorney, but somebody that's been involved in accidents himself. So, folks, thank you very much for tuning in this evening. I appreciate it very much, and I appreciate your comments and your questions. Have a good evening.